Welcome to Science Seminar. This is a seminar that happens every Friday at Highline Community College. The topic today is the wonders of Excel. Hey, you can download this workbook here and follow along. Here's the link, and there'll be a link for the video after I finish it and post it. Now, here's the file, Some of the Wonders of Excel. We're going to get to see some amazing things. That's the file you can download. A file, an Excel file, is actually called a workbook. And within each workbook, there are worksheets. So this is SS. Here are our topics. You can click on each sheet. Keyboards. On topics, you can see we're going to cover a bunch of topics. Copy and paste special, keyboard magic, number format, some examples about formulas, sorting, filtering, and pivot tables. Let's click on our first sheet, copy and paste special. Now, all of us probably know how to copy and paste, but there's something called paste special. Now, let's go ahead and highlight this table and copy it. Now, I'm going to highlight with the selection cursor. That's kind of like that thick cross with a shadow. Click in one cell and drag. And there we have it highlighted. Now, copy. Lots of people right-click copy or click up on this. But really, the fastest way to do it, Control-C. And you can see the dancing ants are marching around. Now, I'm going to click over here in I3. And now, I've copied the whole table, but I have just one cell selected. Now, before I paste, notice the columns here are wide enough to accept the column headers here. Over here, I'm going to paste Control-V, and that's pasted. Now I'm going to use my scroll arrow over here, and look what happened. The column widths are not big enough. Now, in 2010, there's this little smart tag, and it's a control. It says control on it. But you can either open it by hitting the control key, or you can use your mouse and click this. I'm going to hit control. And sure enough, there are a bunch of pictures that say how you want to paste this. Now, when you're learning, you literally have to go through them and point to them and read them. Now, this one says keep source column width, which is exactly what we want. Also, notice in that screen tip, there's a W. So if you hit W, it automatically opens. Now, just remember, you don't have to do the keyboard shortcuts Control-V, Control, and then W. Just remember that, boy, there's all these cool options here. Let's look at a different way to do paste special. I'm going to highlight this, and it's actually still copied, so I could just click down here where I want. And I don't want to paste it the normal way. I want to transpose it. Now, up here, paste. When you're learning how, watch this. It'll give you, as you go through, a preview. So there's paste. You can see the preview. There's just the formulas. There's the formula number formatting, keep source formatting, no borders, column widths, transpose. That's the one we want. And there's a bunch of other options too. You can actually paste a picture, which is not actually in the cells. But let's do this one, transpose. You've got to be kidding me. What does transpose mean? It just means it took the row headers and made them column headers. And it took the column headers and made them row headers. Sometimes that's exactly what you want. So paste special, absolutely awesome. Now, you can do it two ways. You can use this and see the preview, or you can use those cool keyboards. When do you use the keyboards? If you're using copy, paste, transpose all the time, or you're doing the column widths, then Control-W for column widths or Control-T for transpose is a good keyboard shortcut. Now, let's go over to this other sheet. That's nothing. Let's look at an even more awesome reason to learn keyboards. Now, we have some data here. And what I want to do is I want to see how far this data goes down. So I'm going to use either my scroll bar over here, like this. Or I can use the wheel on my mouse and scroll down. But wait, that just takes way, way too long. There's a keyboard shortcut. If you hold Control and down arrow, it jumps to the bottom of the data set. See, 502. Now, Control up arrow jumps to the top. And then I'm going to up arrow to get to my A1. Control home gets to A1. Now, let's do two things. Keyboards, right? I want to highlight this whole data and add a border. So now instead of Control down arrow, do Control Shift down arrow. And that instantly highlights that entire column. And then you click the border button up in the home ribbon font. And sure enough, instantly it has borders. Now I'm going to click here. We could do bold, or you could do Control-B. Now let's look at even more amazing use of keyboards. Let's say we want a total. Now, sum function allows us to highlight a bunch of numbers and add them. You could use this. That's the sum button, sigma. Or you could use the click and click sum. Let's just see what happens when we do this. Ah, but wait a second. Look at that screen tip right there. When I click right there and hold the screen tip, the keyboard shortcut for sum is Alt equals. So you can either click on that or do Alt equals. I'm going to do Alt equals. Now, Excel tries to be polite. It's trying to guess that you want A4 to B4, but that's not what we want. So simply, if the dancing ants are still marching around, click with your selection cursor in one cell. Dancing ants are still selected. Now do Control-Shift down arrow. And instantly, inside the formula, I've highlighted. Now you can sort of see up here it's got the formula. I'm going to hit Enter and then wheel up on my the wheel on my mouse. And instantly you can see you have created a formula very quickly. Now, anyone who's done it the long way, you click and drag, that keyboard shortcut rules. All right, let's go over to this next tab, number format, the next topic. Let's type here. And number formatting can save, well, let's just talk about number formatting. I want to put some sales in here, so I'm going to type $10.00.00 and then $12.50. Now, that's a hassle because I had to type in the $, the decimal, and an extra 0. Here I had to type decimal 00. You can pre-format. So if I highlight this and go up and pre-format, here's the number group in the Home tab. And up here, we see there's a bunch of cool built-in number formats. It's for formatting numbers. I'm going to click on currency. Now notice I've clicked on currency and highlighted it, but nothing's there. Now when I type 10.0, notice two things I've typed, enter, it puts it in for you. 12.5, I've typed in 4 characters, but it will put 4, 5, 6 characters in, the $, the extra 0. Now, let's click back in this cell right here and notice there's only a 10 in the cell. So number formatting, that actually $, decimal 00 is not in the cell. It's just on the surface of the spreadsheet. You can think of it as formatting as facade or like paint on a house or like a Halloween mask. 10 is there, but the Halloween mask shows that. Now that is an example of number formatting to save typing. Let's come over here and look at another type of number formatting. I want to highlight these numbers, 1, 2, 40,620, and 40,644, and come up to number formatting and apply the date. There's a short date and a long date. I'm going to apply short date. And no way. If I apply a date, the number 1 is 1/1/1900. Number 2 is 1/2/1900. Number 40,000, whatever that was, it's 3/18/2011. What? The reason why dates work this way is so we can do date math. Now let's think of an invoice due date. Let's just say our invoice was due on 4/18 and today's date is 4/11. We need to calculate the difference between these two to figure out how many days this invoice's date is late. So I'm going to type 3/18/2011. Now notice I'm typing this in. This slash says I'm typing in a date, but underneath, and there's a bunch of notes here. Underneath there is that number over here. Similarly, when I do 4/11/2011, those big 40,000 numbers, if I come over here and apply the general format, that wipes away all of this number formatting. General, those are the numbers that sit under the cells. So that way we can actually calculate the difference. So imagine, what's 40,644 minus 40,620? I think it's 16 days, right? No, 24 days. So we want to actually make a calculation here. Now, this is the first formula we've done. Easily done. You say take the later date and subtract the earlier date, and it gives you the difference in days between dates. That's why when you have dates, they have to be integers. Now, how do we create a formula? You actually have to put a special character in the cell as the first character to tell Excel, I'm not typing in dates or numbers, I'm typing a formula. And that character is the equal sign. Now, how do we get these dates? You take your cursor and you click, and it puts D9. D9 is the address of that cell. D9 minus, and then click on D8. That's the address of that cell, D8. And then when you hit enter, it tells us 24. Now, why would we put dates in cells and create this formula with what are called cell references? That's cell reference D9 minus cell reference D8. Because if this were to change, like they actually are not paying until the 18th, right? Then our formula updates. The idea here for formulas is that you have formula inputs, that's the dates, and then you use cell references to refer to those formula inputs. All right, so that's pretty tricky there. But if you understand how number formatting is a facade, then this date map thing is really cool. Let's look at some more examples. Project starts on this date. It ends on this date. The project length in days. Well, we simply subtract these. Now, there's one trick here, is if the 14th is included as a project date, 18 minus 14 would give us 1 too few days. So what we're going to do here is we're going to say equals that minus this as cell references plus 1. Now let's come down here. Let's think of another example for date math. Here's our loan amount, the issue date, and the the loan length in days. We can simply add. Hey, take this day, and since there's an integer under there, we simply add 75. It will actually take the number formatting from that and apply it to this cell as a date, but it will do the adding. So now we know the loan is due on 6/1/2010. Now, our next example, I just noticed that our column, these words right here appear to be cut off. So actually, what we'd like to do is come up here, and this is column C. I like to come up between column C and D. And if you point right in between, you see that cursor. That means you can click and drag the column. Click and drag the column. All right, now we have it a little bit wider. Now, our next example, we have a project start date and length of the project, and we want to calculate the project end date. So here, just like the loan, you say this plus, that's a date, but there's integers underneath, plus that, and it will tell us the actual date, 3/29. Now, this assumes that all the days, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, etc., are included, but that's often not the case. So now we have length of project in workdays, 15, and we're going to see an amazing new function that can calculate the project end date, and it will figure out exactly how many work days. Now, the name of this function is workdays. Now, we saw one function already, the sum function, but this is a special date function. And actually, you could come up here with a cell and search. You could type in a search there. You could also go to by category, and it would be under date. You literally would have to go through here and read these. And down here, it gives you a description. This one just happens to be at the very end because it starts with a W, right? And it tells you what it's supposed to do. But there's two things about this. This is a new function in Excel 2010, and there's a feature that helps us build it in the actual cell and helps us complete it, even though we might not know how to complete the function or fill out the right arguments for the function. So let's type equal sign. That starts a formula. And then workday. We're going to use Workday International. Workday used to figure out the actual date given a number of workdays, but it only assumed that there was a Saturday and Sunday. Workday.international is a new 2010 function, and it is amazing. It's pretty nice. The screen tip says, hey, give me the start date. There it is. Comma. The number of days. Hey, there's 15. Comma. And the weekend. This is the major improvement. There's a drop down right in the cell, and it tells you what you want. Our example, we have only Sundays. We work Monday to Saturday. So I'm going to click on the 11th, the number 11. That means the weekend is Sunday only. So I'm going to double click that, and it puts it there. That's our weekend, comma, and it even accounts for holidays. Now, if you don't put your holidays in, it's fine, but we'll just assume there's some holidays here. And no way. It will give us 4/2 instead of 4/29, right? Because there are some Sundays between this date and this. And there are 2 holidays also. Totally amazing. So all that is predicated on the idea that you know that dates, when you type them into cells, actually have numbers underneath. The first day ever recorded in Excel is 1/1/1900. Why did they pick that as the first day? Well, historians do not like the fact that they picked that as the first day, but mostly it's because there aren't any invoices or outstanding loans before that date. Now, one last number formatting, and this is a biggie. This is where lots of people get into trouble. Percentages. Percentages. 0.02. It means give me 2 out of every 100. So if the tax rate is 0.02, you are charged 2 pennies out of every 100 pennies. Now, usually you don't see tax rate or percentage changes expressed as a decimal. So then you apply a percentage format. But here's the big trick. So lots of people type it in like 0.02 and then come up and apply their number formatting. But lots of people do this. They type a 2 and then come up and apply their number formatting. Let's just highlight both cells. I'm sorry, all 4 cells and see what happens. This is one of the #1 mistakes people make in Excel. I'm going to come up to this drop down, and I'm going to select percentage to decimal. Now I'm going to click Escape key. That button there, don't bother with that. It gives you no decimals showing, and sometimes that causes big trouble. If you like it, that's fine. But this one has 2 decimals, so I'm going to click on it. And there's the big problem. People type 2 into the cell, and then they say Excel's not doing it right. Well, you forget that percentages are not numbers. Percentages are formatted symbolic representations of numbers. So when we see 2%, it's the formatted symbolic representation of the number 0.02. And to prove this, let's look at our 2 steps for calculating percentages. We learned this in 5th or 6th grade or in college math, business math class. You first multiply the number by 100. So 0.02 times 100. As soon as you do that, you have exited the realm of numbers and entered the realm of symbolic representation, because 2 does not equal 0.02. All right? And then what's step number 2? You add a percent symbol. So that's why when we put the number 2 in the cell and multiplied by 100 and added the percent symbol. So the rule of thumb is, and I'm going to highlight this and add the general number format. You type in 0.02 and then add your percentage format, just like that. Or you pre-format the cells and then just type a 2. Then it will work, right? And I'll type 2.5. All right, so number formatting, oh so important. And it is a facade. Even if you come down here and type 2.00 and then a percent symbol, still, this is the facade. This is called formatting as you type, right? Formatting as you type. But the thing is 0.02 is still the number in the cell, even though we typed the number 2 in there. Right? You saw me type a 2 there. You can prove that to yourself by coming up here. Notice formatting as you type. I click this drop down and apply general. You can see it right there for yourself. I'm going to undo by Control Z. All right, so formatting, number formatting, so important. But remember, it is a facade. It is like a Halloween mask. It doesn't really, that $sign is not really in the cell. There's a 10 up there. That's all that's in the cell. Now let's click on our next sheet and talk about formulas. In our last couple examples, we did a few formulas, but we just had a single cell where we were calculating using a formula. Let's see what happens when we copy this. Now I'm going to add up the expenses here in this cell right here. And I'm going to use my keyboard shortcut. Instead of this up here, the auto sum, I'm going to use Alt equals. Now notice, if you're using functions like average or sum, Excel is usually trying to be polite and guess, but it sometimes guesses wrong. Those dancing ants are around the wrong cells. We want only expenses. So as long as the dancing ants are still dancing, simply take your selection cursor and click and drag and redirect it. Now, I'm going to hit Enter and then click in this cell. Actually, I'm going to put it in to edit mode again by hitting F2 or double clicking. Now notice the blue box is 1, 2, 3 cells above the cell where the formula is. Now that's important. Those cell references B5 to B7 are actually always going to be looking the 3 cells above. That's why when we copy this formula over, it will properly add the right expenses. So I'm going to Enter and click back on the cell. this cell is selected. And in the corner, if you move your selection cursor, that's that thick white cursor, really close down in the corner, you see a crosshair. Bill Gates called it a crosshair, but I like to call it an angry rabbit. If you click and drag, I'm dragging my mouse, holding the click, the formula is copied. Now when I come to the end and double click or hit F2, I can see the blue box moved as I copied. And that is awesome. That's great. We no longer have to create individual cells. We create one and copy it over. Now let's just think about that. It says B5 to B7 here. But over here it says F5 to F7. So you don't want to think of these as B5 to B7. You want to think of it as, please add up the 3 cells above me, the formula. Right? So that way, as we copy it over, that blue box is always moving. See it moving? So it's called a relative cell reference. It means relative to me, the formula. Where am I going to look? Similarly, if we calculate net income, I'm going to say equals. Click on the revenue, minus, and click on the total expenses. Those are cell references. Yes, they are B4, whatever's in B4 minus whatever's in B8. But as soon as you copy it, it's no longer an actual cell reference. It's a relative position. 4 above, no, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 above minus 1 above. Enter. I'm going to click on that cell. And right in the corner, I'm going to point my selection cursor till I see my angry rabbit, and click and drag. Click in the last cell, hit F2, and there it is. 5 above minus 4 above. Those are relative cell references, and they are huge time savers. Now, there's a bunch of sheets under here, and I can't see them. So now we can use our scroll arrows. We can scroll over here, and it will move the sheets. It won't move the selected sheet. This sheet will still be selected. So I'm going to click. And sure enough, you can see that's still selected, but now I can see the sheets under there. Sometimes a more preferable way is to use the keyboard shortcut Control Page Down. The page up and page down keys are over by the arrow keys. And that actually moves the selected sheet. And if you go far enough down, it'll expose new sheets. Now I'm all the way to the end, so I'm going to Control Page Up. And I'm going to stop on the sheet called, let's see, Control Page Down, FCR2, which is Formula Cell References 2. Now, this is a slightly different situation here. We have 2 examples. Here we have aluminum, and here is the volume. And we want to calculate the mass. Now, in each one of these cells equals this, I need to multiply it by my density over here. So notice I'm multiplying the blue one cell to my left, times E2. Enter, equals 1 cell to my left times E2. So notice as I copy the formula down, the blue box is moving. Equals still 1 cell to my left times E2. So E2, I really don't want to move as a relative cell reference. So if I hit Enter and delete these and come up here and point to my angry rabbit and drag down one, it's 0. And the reason why, if I put this into edit mode, F2, is because this formula is, please always go 1 cell to my left and multiply it by 2 cells to my right. So that formula is not going to work. So let's click in this cell and put it in edit mode. There's an easy trick. If you actually want E2 instead of 2 cells to my left, you make sure that your cursor is touching either in front of the letter, the column reference, in between the two, in front of the row reference, the number, or in the back somewhere, and hit the F4 key. The F4 key puts the secret code in that says this is no longer a relative cell reference 2 to my right. It is locked on E2. Those dollar signs are arbitrary. They just pick those dollar signs way back to mean, hey, this cell reference is locked no matter where I copy it. So now I hit Enter. I come up here, and I point to the fill handle. And when I see my angry rabbit, I can click and drag. Now I want to make sure that this formula is correct. So I click in the last one and hit F2. And there it is. That is 1 cell to my left times E2. Now, I'm going to click Escape, and I want you to undo. Either you click the button up here. It's a little backwards blue arrow, or Control Z. Now, I got to show you a better way to do this. This is a formula. There's stuff all the way to the left, all the way down. I want to copy the formula down all the way down until there's a blank here and stop. If that's the case, you can simply point to your fill handle, that little box in the corner there, with your angry rabbit and double click, and it sends it down. And then I check it, F2. Sure enough, that works. All right, that's a chemistry example. Let's look at a business example here. Here we have gross pay and a deduction. Every single, OK, so the whole column has to be deductions. Every single one's going to be one cell to my left times this. Now I'm going to delete this and show you how I did this. This is FICA and Medicare, assumed tax rates that together will be a deduction. And I want to just use a single rate instead of these two individual ones. Now, most of the times you want to do individual calculations. But here, I just want to show you something. Let's add these up. I'm going to either click on this or use the keyboard shortcut for AutoSum, Alt equals. Now, it guesses totally wrong, but no problem. Now, this screen tip is annoying. It's right in the way. You can actually point to it, and that cursor is the move cursor for the screen tip, and you can click and move it out of the way. Now, it's polite. It highlights it, and the dancing ants are moving, so you can simply redirect it. Right, so I redirected, and that's right, enter. Now, 0.062 plus 0.0145 is not 0.08. So what is going on here? Again, this is one of the most important lessons in Excel. We are being tricked by the Halloween mask, the facade on the outside of the house. There's a great button here, increase decimals. So I'm going to click in this cell and use the increase decimals. And sure enough, I can see that the decimals were actually not showing enough. That number, 0.0765, was in the cell. If I go like this, that number, 0.08, that's only on the surface. That actual number is still underneath there. So we want to match what we see to the actual number, right? All right, now we can calculate our deduction. Equals one cell to my left times, and now I'm going to click on this and immediately hit the F4 key to lock it. Now that means one cell to my left, blue one, times K2. Control Enter, and double click and send it down. Now I'm going to click in the last cell in F2. It worked perfect. Whenever you're copying down your formula somewhere, go to the last one, check it, audit it, make sure it's right. Escape. All right, so that's a lot about number formatting and formulas. Let's go look at some great examples of data analysis. I'm going to click on the sheet Sort. Data analysis just means, in fact, what we did here was make a calculation. And Excel is king for calculations. Absolutely awesome. But Excel is also king for data analysis. So I'm going to click on this sort sheet. Data analysis just means taking a bunch of raw data and organizing it in some way that is useful to make some decision. We're going to look at 4 examples of sorting. Right? Now, here's some times, and we want to sort them from smallest to biggest. No, smallest to biggest. Maybe it was the fastest time in some science experiment, or it was the fastest time in some assembly project. And so you want to see the smallest ones on top. So the way you sort, you have to have a field name at the top. That's a column header that says what data is in this column. You also have to have blanks all the way around. That's why I have this little column separating the next data set. And most important, you have to click in one cell in the column you want to sort. Right? Then there's lots of ways to sort. You can go up to the Home ribbon, and there's a Sort A to Z, Escape. There's also the Data ribbon, Sort A to Z. And there's also right-click Sort, A to Z or Z to A. So sort smallest to largest or largest to smallest. I'm just going to use the Data ribbon. I like this. So I want the smallest one on top, so I'm going to click A to Z. And just like that, instantly sort it. Now let's look what happens if you have 2 columns, because this is more commonly the case. So you have your times for your experiments, and these are the cities which you recorded these times, and you want to sort them. Now oftentimes the fear with 2 columns or more, you can have 10 columns if you want, is if you sort this time column, won't it mix up all the records? No way. And just to prove to you, I'm going to put some yellow there. Now again, the trick is one cell in the column you want to sort, and there's blanks all the way around. Notice not even the notes are touching. If they were, it wouldn't work. So I'm clicking in one cell, and I'm going to click Z to A. And that brings the biggest ones up to the top. And sure enough, the actual record, this is called a record here, the individual row, was not destroyed. It was retained perfectly. The fidelity of the data set is intact when you sort. Still another sort. Sometimes you have numbers. Here we had words and numbers. Here we have numbers and whatever this is, quality rating. So it's some symbols. We can sort on this column. I'm going to go A to Z. So one cell in the column I want to sort, all the way around blanks. Still another great example for sorting is, what if you want to randomize a list? Well, that means we need to add an extra column with a formula that adds a random number. And the formula is going to be, we're going to use the rand function. So equals, by the way, the reason why this isn't calculating is because there's a space right there. If you have a space and then the equal sign, it doesn't know that it's a formula. Equal sign says I'm a formula. It means you're telling Excel I'm going to create a formula. RAND. Now rand, open parentheses, close parentheses, is an argumentless function, right? If only marriages were like that. We could just put nothing in the parentheses and there'd be no arguments. No, no, no. Argument function is great here. It just means it does what it does without adding something like a range of cells. Now what does it do? It calculates a number randomly between 0 and 1 with 15 digits. I'm going to enter this, click in the cell, and I'm going to point to that little fill handle. And when I see that fill handle, I double click and send it down. Now, how do I get this to randomize? You can, any action, actually, you can put a cell into edit mode and hit enter, and it automatically the numbers change. So any action in the spreadsheet. Also, the key F9. So the key F9 randomizes. So if I hit F9, F9, F9. Now, what do? You just sort. And watch this. There's something strange. The act of sorting will have the rand function recalculate. So by the time it's done sorting the names randomly, it's already recalculated. And so the numbers actually won't look sorted, even though it does randomly sort the name. So right click. I'm going to do the right click method, sort, and then whichever one, Z to A, A to Z. And the names are sorted randomly. All right, let's click on the sheet called filter. Another great feature in Excel, this is a data analysis feature, is called filter. Data ribbon, filter. You got to turn it on. And no way, up at the top there's a drop down. Absolutely amazing. Let's say we want to see quad product in the West region only, and then we want to copy and paste them somewhere else for our boss or whatever. Now, I'm going to go to product and click the drop down. Now, there are a bunch of built-in text filters that we're not going to look at here, but just look at this. We can instantly say, I want to only see quad. So I'm going to unselect all and click quad. Click OK. Now, filter is different than sort. If we had sorted on this column in quads, we'd still see all of the 105 records. We would just, all the quads would be together, all the bellens would be together, etc. What does filter do? It actually hides. So you could see 26 to 29. Oh, so it actually hides some of the rows. And the row headers are blue. You can tell it's filtered. But no way. We can come over here. And I forget what I said. I think I wanted quad west, right? So now I'm going to filter this one too. Unselect all and west. And just like that, you have exactly your records. So let's highlight the table. And the keyboard shortcut for copy is Control-C. Now notice Control-C, when it's filtered, does something different. It actually, the dancing ants are really partying down, right? They're like dancing around only the visible cells. But there's lots of them. Now, I don't want to paste this over to the side, because when it hides it, then it hides it. So I'm actually going to create a new sheet in Excel 2007 and 10. You can click on this and it adds a new sheet. I'm immediately going to double click this sheet and call it, double click it and type data dump. And then enter. And now I'm going to Control V for paste. I had cell A1. absolutely amazing filter. Now you can come up here and you can actually undo these one at a time, or you can click clear. Another great use for filter is you can go to numbers, and you're not going to believe this. There are a bunch of amazing number filters. You could say things like greater than a certain number, less than or equal to, top 10, above average. Absolutely amazing. So top 10, you have the choice either top or bottom. And you can say whatever number you want there. I'm going to say top 10. And just like that, we have only the top 10. They're hidden. You can see that it's blue. Looks like they were already sorted like that. But then it makes it easy to copy and paste. I'm going to click here and say clear sales. So filter, totally amazing. Now last topic here, pivot tables. People always think pivot tables are hard. They are not. They're perhaps the easiest feature in Excel, and yet they're the most powerful. Now the key to pivot table is you have some data set like this, and you have field names at the top, just like you did for filter. You had to have field names and records and rows. And for sorting, right? Field names at the top and then records and rows. Same with pivot tables. Now pivot tables, what are you doing with a pivot table? Well, let's say your boss dumps this little picture on your desk and says, oh, here's all the sales reps. Here's the regions. And so for each intersecting cell, the row header says FAM, and the column header says Midwest. So this intersecting cell says, hey, I went through this whole huge data set and added up FAM sales in the Midwest. Now this is really hard to do. It's insane manually, and it's really hard to do with formulas. But pivot tables, it takes 4 clicks to do this. So anytime you have a situation like this, it is easy. You just do create a pivot table. Now, let's look at this picture. These are called row headers. It means this is a row, and everything in this row belongs to Frank. Everything in this row belongs to Galt. Everything in this column belongs to Midwest. Everything in this column belongs to South. Column header or column label. In databasing, they call it a field. In Excel, they call it a column header or column label. And this is a row header or row label. All right? And these are called values. That means there's some calculation like sum or average being done inside the table. Now, here's how you do it. You click in a single cell somewhere in the data set. It doesn't matter where. And we need to, by the way, this is going to take 4 clicks. All right? You go to the Insert menu. You click on Pivot Table, and I'm going to count this as 1 click. So you click there, and it will guess the data set as long as you have blanks all the way around. We talked about that with sort. So it'll guess right. If you want it on a new worksheet, which we do, if you didn't, you could say click on existing worksheet and place it somewhere here and click OK. So I'll count that all as 1 click, right? Now, we won't remember, we can look at this. Actually, this usually can come off to the side like this. I kind of brought it closer over here so it's easier to see. What is this? This is just a list of the field names or the column headers. And look down here. It's like that picture we saw. There are the column labels, there's the row labels, and there's the values. All you do is click and drag. So we want region. So I'm going to click on it and drag. See that no? It means no, no. You can't drop it there. No, no. I'm going to drag it right down into columns. So that's click number 2. Sales rep. No, no, no. I'm going to drag it into row labels. You can see it starting to merge. And finally, sales. I'm going to drag it down into values. So in 3 clicks, that is just profound. Now, we do want to do a little bit of formatting here. This is silly right here. This should say sales rep, and this should say region. That is the default on a pivot table. Up here, these are called context-sensitive ribbons. If I click outside the pivot table, whoa, the field list disappears and the context-sensitive ribbons. So I'm going to click here. If this doesn't show up, you can always right-click, and it'll say Show Field List. But what we want to do is come up to, we want to change these, the kind of format of this. So we're going to go up to Design. And you just got to remember this. This is a weird kind of thing. Up to Report Layout. and show in tabular. Basically, every time I ever create a pivot table, I do that. And now we see sales rep and region. They really should have that as the default, but for some reason they don't. You could also add formatting if you want. I usually don't add too much formatting, maybe something like that. And we want to do one other thing. We want to add, in this case, some number formatting. Now, we saw how to use the number format group in the Home tab, but in a pivot table, you don't want to do it that way. Just remember, you can click anywhere in the numbers and right-click, and you have to point to Value Field Settings. Now, it says Value because these are numbers, Field because that's what they call them. They're called fields, and Settings. This is where all the cool tricks are. So I'm going to click on this. You can change the name that appears right there. You can change the function. This is where you change it to average or max or whatever you want. And right here is the number format. So I'm going to click on that. And just like with the similar to that drop down we saw on the home ribbon, you can select whatever you want. I'm going to select currency, for example, and it gives you a sample. And then click OK. Click OK. So if you're going to do a little bit of formatting, so it's a couple extra clicks, but that is amazing. Now let's look at our one last example for pivot tables. Oh, actually, we don't want to leave this sheet 4, because when we come back to it later, we'll be like, what's sheet 4? So I'm going to double click this, and I'm going to say something like report 1 or something, or pivot table 1 or something like that. All right, now I'm going to come back over here. There's our data set. And then I'm going to come back over to PT2. This is our second example for a pivot table. So here again, we have field names or column headers at the top, and then some data. Class rating for instructors and how long they've been tenured, so they've been grouped. And here's our picture. Oh, these are row headers. These are column headers. And here we want to count. So anytime you have a setup like this, it's actually called a cross-tabulated table. Again, there's one variable, row label, column label. So from 5 to 10 years, we had 8 people say the instructor was good. 1 to 5 years, 5. All right, so we want to make this table. We click in one cell. We go to Insert, Pivot Table, Pivot Table. I'm going to accept the defaults and click OK. It will put it on a new sheet. I'm immediately going to double click it and call it report 2 or something more descriptive. So I double clicked it, typed, and hit enter. Now I have that name. Now, this one doesn't have a number like sales or units, but no problem. You just simply drag. So I think it was row labels here, class rating here. You can drag either one of these text entries, because class rating and tenured, you could see they're actual words. Even though those are numbers, it's considered text. You drag either one of them to the values, and it counts. Just like that. Instantaneous. You have used a pivot table with a few clicks. And remember, envision your table up front. But anytime you can envision it up front and you can find it in the ribbon, it's just a few clicks. Now let's do our two things. Once again, I'm going to go to Design, Report Layout, and Show in Tabular. I'm going to add some formatting, whatever you like. And that's it. All right. Actually, I'm going to add one extra. I was going to end the video, but I'm going to add one extra section. And actually, when you download this workbook, you'll see that here's the sheet PT1, and the red ones will be the answer. So here's report 2. One last topic, I want to talk about charts. Now, charts are awesome. You can take data like this that is busy and hard to see any detail and pattern. But a chart allows you to take these numbers, put them in a chart, and get an immediate visual understanding of any patterns or trends, right? A picture tells 1,000 words. Now, we just did some pivot tables. Pivot tables and charts are the easiest way, or pivot tables allow you to create charts with, in essence, one click. I'm going to show you how to do it with the pivot table, and then I'll show you how to do it with some non-pivot table data. Most of the time you have non-pivot table data. Watch this. Here's that same pivot table we did 2 pivot tables ago. Notice the pivot table tools. You can go to Options and Pivot Chart. You could also, if your cursor is inside the pivot table, go to the Insert, which we'll see this is where you create standard charts. But if you are in a pivot table, here in the Insert ribbon or Pivot Tables, click this, same, it'll get you to the same place. Now I'm going to do a column. And a column chart is great. Columns compare items across categories, right? And we have East, Midwest, South, and sales rep. These column charts with just a single click will instantly create a chart that is quite easy to see and understand. So I'm going to click on this. And here's our categories, and we'll see a few of them, and then I select the one I want. Now, these are going to be columns clustered, so each one of the sales rep will be shown within East. You could also do a stacked column or a 100% stacked column. We're just going to look at this one. I'm going to click there and click OK. That is just profound. Now, this is slightly different than a normal chart. It's a pivot table. If you were to pivot this, move the region over to the row headers and the sales rep up to the column headers, the chart would instantly update. So if you can create a pivot table, there's more leeway in changing it. Now, just amazing. These sales reps are here. And over here, this is called the legend. You can quickly see FAM. The largest sales were in the West. All right, now let's see how to do this same chart, but without a pivot table. Now, notice pivot table, one cell, click the chart button, boom. Here, you just have to highlight the data. So this is not a pivot table. And probably most of the time, you are going to get data like this or like this. So I'm going to click there, go to Insert, and I'm going to do that same column. It's the same picture. It's just not a pivot table. Now, one cool thing about column, and this is, we talked about cross-tabulated, right? You can easily switch back and forth between these categories on the horizontal axis and the legend. You go up to the Chart Tools, and right here, switch rows and columns. So I'm going to click, and sure enough, they instantly change. All right, I'm going to drag this off the side. So those are columns. They show these are the categories, and it compares items across categories. Let's look at a line chart. And I'm just going to look at a line chart and an XY scatter, because this is one of 2 charts that usually confuses people. Even my dad, who's a PhD physicist, phones me up and like, I can't get my line chart to work. Well, here's the deal. Line charts, one number and a category. So you could have bird sightings and then the city. So we'll do a line chart, and it will show, a line chart will show how these change over cities. You could also have 2 numbers, but this in essence is a category too. Here's the years and the bird sightings. But in each case, the bird sightings are the number. One number is going to be plotted. When we do an XY scatter, like here we have angle and range, there's 2 numbers. So that's the conceptual trick. Line chart's one number. XY scatter, 2 numbers. Let's go ahead and see how to do it. Again, it's pretty much a one click. I definitely want a name at the top that says what this data is. And I'm going to go up to Insert and Line. And click on this one right here. Or if you want to see the dots. And just like that, I can see I have a chart. Now, usually, you want a category here. Sometimes you don't. By the way, this is bird sightings. This says bird sightings, and anytime you have unnecessary duplication like that, that's called chart junk. So click on this, and the keyboard shortcut for delete is delete. Now, again, most of the times you have some categories or labels and some numbers. So let's go ahead and highlight this again. Always useful to have the name at the top to say what data is in the column. We go up to Insert, Line, and I'm going to select this one again. Oh, that is awesome. Now we have our categories here. Notice if you have your data set up smartly, charts, basic charts are 1 or 2 clicks. I'm going to get rid of this chart junk. Drag this over here. One other important point about line charts. If we have numbers both here, it's going to interpret this incorrectly. So I will show you how to fix that. Year and bird sightings. Right, so I'm going to go up to Insert, Line, and select this one again. Ooh, it thinks there's 2 lines, which is great. You can actually have multiple columns of sales, for example, and then they'll give you multiple lines, right? But we need to fix this. It interpreted the data incorrectly. The most important button for charts is once you have the chart selected, these chart tool context sensitive ribbons pop up. You come over to Design, Data, and Select Data. This is the most important button because you can come here and edit, change, add, remove any data series. Series is the word they use for numbers. Category is the word they use for labels. All right, so I'm going to, it was the year that's incorrect. So I'm simply going to click on it and remove. And now we have our correct line, but what about this? Not good? No problem. We can come over here to horizontal axis and edit. And now, ooh, this is going to be hard. Now, because I can't get under the chart here, so I'm actually have to click Cancel, click OK, move this out of the way, anticipating that I'll have to access these cells. I click here, I go up to Select Data, I go up to Edit, and now I can highlight just the years, and then click OK, and now you can see that's there. By the way, again, this is the most powerful part of the charting wizard. A lot of times your chart won't interpret data correctly, so you have to build it from scratch, right? You put the first data series with numbers, and then you come here and add, add, add. Click OK. And now we have our correct category and number. So again, line charts, one number. That number will be on the vertical axis, and they'll have a line going up and down. Chart junk, delete. All right, one last chart. Just in this basic introduction, XY scatter, you have 2 numbers. So in essence, you go out the horizontal or x-axis and then up the vertical or y-axis. Again, you always want your names at the top. I'm going to highlight this whole data set. Our trick we learned earlier, what do? Control-Shift down arrow. Once we do that, we go up to Insert, and there it is, Scatter. Scatter diagram. If you have very predicted data, like for example in a break-even chart in business, you can select this. But most of the time, if the data is data and it's going to be scattered all over the place, you select this one. You see, oh, there is a pattern, right? A couple things here. We can show a trend line, but also we need to label the axes here. So I'm going to click right here and hit Delete. I'm going to click up here, and I want to just create a new chart title. So I'm going to type, I selected it, and I'm simply going to start typing. I know this seems weird, but I'm going to type angle and range, and then enter. That's kind of weird the way that works, but all right, now we need to add some labels here. So I'm going to go out to Chart Tools, Context Sensitive Ribbons, Layout, Axis Titles. I'm going to do the horizontal first. Title below. I'm going to type angle, enter. Go back up to Axis Titles, vertical. When you have a choice, I'm going to say this, range. Now, one last really cool thing about XY scatter. You can click on the data points here and then right-click Add Trend Line. Now, a trend line will do all the mathematical heavy lifting and estimate, give the estimation line. Now, we don't want linear here. This is polynomial order 2, one hump here. And so I'm going to estimate it with this. You could even put the equation, and you'll see the equation down here. And then I'm going to click Close. This equation here, I'm going to click. Now, that's highlighting the axis there. There it is right there. Sometimes it's tricky to get your item. And I'm going to use my Move cursor, and I'm going to click and drag. Maybe up there. Maybe I'm going to put it right there. And then I'm going to click on these lines right here. You can see they're selected, and hit the Delete key. So there you go, an x, y scatter. The point here, it's two variables. It always goes out, and or whichever direction on the x. And then once it gets to its position, it goes up or down. All right, that is a lot. That's like a bunch about charts there. But the whole video is like a tour through Excel and what Excel could do. Now I'm going to click on this and go all the way back here to our topics. When we started, there was only 11, but I added charts and graphs. So we did some copy and paste, some keyboard magic. We talked about number formatting, all the amazing things, formulas. We talked about sorting, filtering, pivot tables, and charts and graphs. All right, we'll see you next science seminar.